Hi everyone, it's Silence. Today I'm very excited to introduce you to the Ostara Tarot. This is a project that I followed a little bit online. That's how I first got to know about it, probably through Tumblr, and maybe that's how you first became aware of this incredible deck as well. And so when I found it in a bookstore the other day, I was so surprised. I didn't realize that it was going to be available in the mass market. I thought maybe I'd have to wait for a super special online release, but it turns out you can just walk into a well-stocked bookstore or a bookstore that specializes in metaphysical books and perhaps just pick it up off the shelf like I did. What first caught my eye about this is the amazing presentation. It's so beautiful. It comes in this lovely little box with a ribbon, and it's even magnetized, so it's not going to flop open on you. And let's see if you can see that. We have portraits of the artists inside, and it comes with a full color book that describes each of the cards, as well as reversal meanings. I love the Emperor card, perhaps for obvious reasons. There's just so much to get into this little book, and I think that they did a really nice presentation. It's a book that's actually going to last. I don't get the feeling that the pages are going to pop out very easily, and you get to see each of the cards, which I think is very helpful because in some of them, like I would say the Page of Cups here, maybe you can see, there's not a real obvious cup inside the image, but you can kind of see, I think, on the pattern of the tent behind the person here. So you can see them, but sometimes they're a little subtle, they're a little hidden. So being able to see at a glance exactly which card you're looking at is really nice. It's also got some quick keywords and phrases that you can just look at, and so you can focus on learning these if you really want to learn the meaning that the artists have instilled in these cards rather than intuitive meanings, which, I mean, you bring to it anyway, but or a standard Rider-Waite-Smith set of meanings. And it also has a short little bio of the artists in the back, which I think is very nice. Now it might, yeah, here it is. And you get to see what part of the deck each artist contributed to. So I love how the artist's vision and their creative input are so central to the presentation of this deck, and that dimension of what tarot is very front and center in this particular creation, and I really like that. I will definitely be keeping this sweet little box, but because I liked this deck so much, I had to make a super special pouch for it, so I made a plush lined sparkly pouch just for this deck. Now, perhaps the first thing you notice when you pick this deck up is that it's got these silver gilt edges. Now, I've seen plenty of gold gilt edges, but I don't know if I've seen a silver one. That being said, I have not bought loads of decks over my life. I like the backs a lot too. They're beautiful. They've got this lovely kind of Tiffany blue, but they have a deeper quality. They have life coming out of death. They've got the inescapable aspect of life that is death and renewal, and that is part of what the spirit of Ostara is all about life coming out of death and about the balance between dark and light. So let's take a look through the cards. The Sun here is out of order. The Fool, High Priestess, Magician. A couple of them are out of order, clearly. Empress, an Emperor, Hierophant, Lovers, Chariot. I think you can see the text. There's just a minimum border around, just on the inside of the edge of the card. So it's very unobtrusive. Unfortunately, in some of the cards, the white on a light background is a little hard to read. So I don't know. I strain on a couple of these myself. So you might not be alone if that's a problem you encounter. I like these cards a great deal. I love the saturated color. I love the storybook feel. I like how they are loaded with symbolism, but not always real blatant in-your-face symbolism, the way that some of the very traditional classic tarot decks are, which is what a lot of people really love. So if you look for very symbol-rich, very symbol-heavy decks, this might not do it for you. It works really well for me. I've been looking for a deck that I can use as kind of a general deck. When people walk up to me and they want a reading at a festival or a party or something like that, and I don't know them very well, their query seems to be a little general. If they just say, oh, I need to know what the universe is trying to communicate to me right now, what do I need to know about the upcoming 6 months or whatever, this is the kind of deck that I might reach for because it is very accessible. It doesn't have the really ostentatious nudity or sexual content that, say, the Sluttish Tarot does, but it doesn't have the kind of spooky edge that my Tarot of the Sweet Twilight does. This is very approachable, it's very friendly, it's very all ages in kind of the traditional sense, because occasionally I will read at psychic fairs and there'll be kids there and they'll say, oh, I really want a reading. And I mean, as an adult, sometimes I wonder, what on earth do kids want readings about? But yet I remember being young and being very fascinated by tarot and tarot symbolism. So just wanting that experience is something I can really strongly relate to. So I think this is the kind of deck that I might use for circumstances like that. Now in this deck, the Wands suit is often portrayed as this beautiful, slender branch. I'm not even sure if you can see it really well, with growing leaves typically. And that's a really nice wand. It's very graceful and lively, and it goes back to that springtime imagery with these fresh, tender leaves just sprouting. When it comes to choosing tarot decks, I often gravitate towards art that's kind of in this vein, and frankly, that's kind of this is the kind of art that I enjoy, just generally, not necessarily strictly tarot. I love illustration. That is art that has a really narrative quality to it. I like imagining who these characters are, where they came from, what their circumstances are. This is such a sweet, cozy card, and it's kind of a different take on the Nine of Cups. It's very subdued, it's very relaxed. It really speaks to home in a way that not all of the Nine of Cups cards I've seen really have. There's certainly the same connotations of success, of rest, of leaning back and saying, yes, I've achieved so many things and now it's time to relax and time to restore myself. But there's a relaxed, gentle quality to this particular, maybe it's just because I like cats, let's be honest, and there's a giant cat with a teacup on its head. Or maybe they're not giant, maybe this person is just very, very small enough that they can put teacups on cat heads. Here's another one of those cards where the suit symbols are quite subtle. And this is an interesting card because there's this ominous quality of the unseen octopus that's kind of closing in on this couple who are blindfolded. the only light is these bioluminescent jellyfish all over the place, and some of these little tiny fish down here. And that's an interesting take on the Ten of Cups here. There's the page again, the Knight. If you can't really see, these are quite glossy cards, and they remind me more of oracle cards, like the what's her name, the all of those decks produced by Hayes House, Marianne Williamson. They remind me a lot of those cards that are not really meant to be shuffled, maybe, because they're very stiff. They're stiff and they don't seem to have a lot of bend and flex to them. So this deck makes me think that it should be picked through or you know, kind of thumbed through like this by people. However, I've been working with it quite a bit, just shuffling, and it seems to have broken in fairly well. But I'm still a little hesitant to really get a shuffle going, which is how I prefer to mix cards. Not everyone likes to do that, certainly. But that might be something to keep in mind if you, like me, are someone who really prefers to shuffle their deck. I like this card a lot. It's got the pretty typical heart with the daggers, but there's a little frog hiding in the ivy. And what has this frog seen? Because it looks like the carving was made first before the knives were stuck in. And I wonder, and here's more of that narrative quality that I love so much, what has the frog seen? What does the frog know about the circumstance? Is there an outside observer? Is there someone wishing harm on the circumstance that the querent is reading about? There's some interesting facets to this card. Fourth, oh, here's another interesting thing about this deck. It is not consistent where the numbers are placed. Here it's at the bottom. On this one, it's at the top. Here it is back at the top again. Ah, one of my favorites. It's a raccoon carrying a whole bundle of swords away from a circus. Or, well, away from tents. I'm just making the assumption that it's a circus. And this tiny little raccoon fingers. Ah, they're so cute. Yeah, I like this deck, this card. I like the deck too, but this card is maybe one of my personal favorites. It's really hard to pick favorite cards because they're all so well illustrated. They're all taken very seriously, and they're all given a great deal of weight by the artists. And, oh, look, this is a really interesting Ten of Swords. Yes, it's a whale that has been pierced so many times. It's someone who finally has all those swords, maybe that they've been collecting, or in some cases, maybe they've been trying to avoid all these swords. But all these swords have found them nonetheless. But it is still a being, a person that is not overwhelmed by this burden. No matter how many swords there are, it is still someone who rises above, who keeps on swimming. And a sand fox. Ah, the little sand fox. So sweet. There's a lot of animal imagery in this, as you have probably noticed. There's a crane. Lots of antlers. All of the kings have been given antlers or stag imagery. There's a tiny little vole, maybe. Maybe it's a mouse. But it's very cute with its little waistcoat on. And the book goes into some of the animal imagery that is found on the cards. Like I know in particular, my card a day that I was doing a couple days ago for this deck, the Two of Pentacles here, they talk about the sparrows in particular. And so I like how animal imagery is integrated in this deck without this being a quote-unquote animal deck or animal energies deck, which are great, but are not really decks that I work very frequently with. They don't do for me what they seem to do for a lot of people. So I really don't have a lot of animal decks, although I do have a mini copy of the Wooden Tarot, which is all animal imagery. Animals and nature. I like the raccoons again with their little silver tea set back there. And the coins are different. This one here seems to have some ancient world imagery on it. These have some maybe Renaissance imagery, some very ornate coins. These are a little rougher again. This one here, it has the square hole cut in the center. And you can just see that the ornament she has in her hair is a coin. And here's the final card, the King of Coins. This is a really beautiful deck. I'm very happy to have it. I'm glad that it finally came together after all these years. This is one I would recommend as a friendly beginner's deck, and I think it's especially useful if you already have some familiarity with the Rider-Waite system, the Rider-Waite-Smith system, and imagery and symbolism and all that numerology that is loaded into that particular system. Because in many ways this is a Rider-Waite-Smith clone, but it really has its own energy, its own spirit, its own personality. And it brings some very interesting twists to cards that you thought you knew very well. And I like that about it. I like that it's requiring me to grow a little bit as a reader. It's requiring me to learn some new skills and to get to know a deck that is kind of distinctive. I love the storybook quality to it, like I've been saying. It's lush, it's luxurious, it's kind of it makes me feel like this is, ooh, it's a fancy deck. Admittedly, some of that is this gorgeous silver gilt. A couple people online have commented that the silver seems to flake off a little bit. I noticed that the first few times I was shuffling, but after I kind of worked with the deck for a few days, it really has stopped. So I think that, you know, all of the excess will flake off, and then you get just what you're going to get for the rest of a while, hopefully. I mean, I don't think I've owned a deck with gilt edges before, so I really have no idea how long or how well they stand out or stand up to use. I'm really excited to use this with my clients. I'm very excited to use this with myself, frankly. So thank you very much for going through this exploration of the Ostara Tarot with me. Go pick it up. I know you can order it from major bookstores as well as independent bookstores, metaphysical shops. You can ask about it. Yeah, it's gorgeous, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I have. Thanks.